And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska Marine Weather Outlook on this Friday, September 20th, 2024. And we start with looking at the sea ice, and the ice has largely melted off along the Beaufort Sea coastline here in the Arctic. And as a result, we're near that minimum of ice that's expected here at the very end of the summer season, entering early fall. We still have some ice, though, along and off of the Russian Arctic coast, but I would expect as we start to get into the very end of this month, early October, there is going to be some colder air returning across this region as low pressures work their way up into the Gulf of Alaska, and with more of a northerly flow. That will allow for the first early season ice to begin to develop in some areas here along the far north. Otherwise, the weather map late tonight into early Saturday morning has a weakening low over the southeastern Gulf that's brought gusty winds, small craft to gale force, low-end gale force winds here, areas of the Panhandle, inner channels, along with areas of rain and rain showers. Those areas of rain and rain showers will linger throughout Saturday, even into early Sunday morning in southern parts of the Panhandle. Back to the west, we have couple of lows, one weakening here just north of the central Aleutians, and this is the next main low that's going to ride along the Aleutians and then emerge on the south side of the Alaska Peninsula and push up into the western Gulf very late Sunday night and on Monday of next week. We have a trough here in the north, upper level, mid-upper level trough that's helping to create some accumulating snow here along the central eastern Brooks Range, especially the Dalton Highway in the vicinity of Anaktuvuk Pass could pick up as much as 6 to 12 inches of snow through early Sunday morning. And by Saturday, we have the low weakening here along the outer portion of the Panhandle coast, the low skirting the western southern Aleutians there in the North Pacific. And by Sunday, that low will be pretty strong, down around 967 millibars. So we'll definitely have some stronger winds, and as this front will arc out into the lower Gulf, lifting northeastward. This will bring the next round of some moderate to locally heavy rain, especially into the areas of the Panhandle late Sunday night and into Monday, Tuesday, even lingering into Wednesday. And as this system works its way up into the Gulf, that's what's going to cause, on the backside of it, more of a northerly flow, drawing down some colder air across northern and western portions of the mainland. So Saturday, marine forecast for the inner channels, we're looking at south-southeast winds 20 knots. That's Dixon entrance up through Stevens Passage. Waves could be as high as 8 feet there south of Metlakatla. And northerly winds 20 knots, Lynn Canal 3-4 foot waves. Kind of a mixed bag of winds where that front is. South-southwest winds 20 to 25 knots south of Sitka, but more of an offshore east-northeasterly winds as much as 15 to 20 knots Sitka up toward Gustavus. And then for Sunday, those winds are going to come down, at least in through areas of the inner channels. We're looking at south-southeast winds 15 to 20 knots. Waves generally only 3 feet, maybe as much as 4 feet there, Dixon entrance, and then back out here toward the outer coast, southwest to south winds 20 knots. They're going to go back toward the southeast, 20 knots there outside of Gustavus and Yakutat Bay. Swells generally around 6 feet, though as high as 8 feet there south of Sitka to off of Craig. Now in the Gulf, Saturday we expect here in the northwestern Gulf, Prince William Sound northwest winds of 20 knots, 3 foot waves. Upper Cook Inlet north winds 10 knots, 2 3-foot waves. And Kennedy entrance outside there of the lower Cook Inlet, look for northwest winds 15 to 20 knots. But those winds are going to pick up on Sunday in advance of that stronger area of low pressure that's going to be riding up on the south side of the Alaska Peninsula and the frontal system lifting up into the lower Gulf. That's going to bring on strong easterly flow. Outside of Hinchinbrook entrance, we're looking at 30-knot winds, swell 6 feet. Highest winds, waves will be entrance of Cook Inlet, Kamishak Bay to northeast of Kodiak, 40-knot gales with swells of 11 to 12 feet. For Saturday across Kodiak Island, variable winds around 10 knots there in Shelikof Strait and south of Akiak, and then winds becoming east-southeast 15 to 20 knots as we trail out down through the lower half of the Alaska Peninsula. But then as that low passes, as I said, just on the south side here North Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula. We find gales, easterly gales, 35 knots is around Kodiak Island, as high as 45 knots there within Shelikof Strait. Swells upward 10, 11 feet. Northeasterly gales, 40 knots there out and across Bristol Bay. Northeast to north winds 30 to 35 knots going down there up north of Cold Bay. And again, waves could be as high as 11 to 14 feet there, especially north of Cold Bay. The Aleutians will see south-southwest winds, eastern Aleutians 20-25 knots, turning back toward the east 25 knots, and then southeast west of Adak, and back toward the east-northeast 25 to 30 knots west of Kiska to Shemya on Saturday. For Sunday, with that low in the wake of it, north-northwest winds 35 knots there, Dutch Harbor. As we get back toward west of Nikolsky to Adak, and we expect winds to be northwest 25 knots, and then west of Adak, look for north-northwest winds 15 to 20 knots. For the southwest coast on Saturday, still offshore flow, northeasterly flow out of Bristol Bay, Kuskokwim Bay, Norton Sound, around 15 knots, maybe as high as 20 knots there just west of Imanik. Strongest winds will be 25 knots out of the east, the Pribilovs up into St. Matthew with waves of 8 feet. Sunday, though, we have that stronger low on the south side of the Alaska Peninsula, so 35-knot gales out of Bristol Bay. North winds 30 knots out of Kuskokwim Bay and the Pribilovs, and waves as high as 11 feet out there toward St. Paul. Northeast winds 25 to 30 knots out of Norton Sound and along the Yukon coastline. Waves running 5 to 6 feet. For the far north, including the Bering Strait, south of the Bering Strait, look for northeasterly winds 15 knots, waves 3 feet. Lower Chukchi north-northeast winds 10 to 15 knots, waves generally running 2 to 3 feet. And then areas from Point Lay through Utqiagvik to Prudhoe Bay, north winds 10 to 15 knots, becoming more easterly in the vicinity of Kaktovik. And on Sunday, winds across at least the central eastern Arctic coast, Prudhoe Bay to Kaktovik, easterly at 15 knots, 3 feet. And then as we drop down along the northwest coast, the Chukchi coastline, we're looking at northeasterly winds 20 to 25 knots, strongest here off of Cape Lisburne and Point Hope, with waves of 4 to 6 feet. And then along south of the Bering Strait on the west side of the Seward Peninsula and the north side of St. Lawrence Island, look for northeasterly winds 20 to 25 knots and waves 4 to as high as 7 feet there, especially on the north side of St. Lawrence in the vicinity of Savunga and Gamble on Sunday.